Good morning. Hope everybody's doing really great on this December 29th as we get into the morning Devo with Bo O, and I am blessed to be your guys' host. Going through the book of Romans right now. And we just got done the book of Acts, and it was so neat because at the end of the book of Acts, we got that the Apostle Paul finally made it to his court time with Caesar after a long time, right? He spent 3 years approximately before he got to Rome. And upon getting to Rome, we got the idea that he got with the Jews and he discussed with the prominent Jews things concerning Christ. Now, I gotta believe that he actually went over to some of the book of Romans because he wrote the book of Romans in Corinth, from Corinth, a lot earlier than the time that he finally arrived in Rome for his trial before Caesar. And I got to imagine that the Jews knew that book from there, or they were familiar somewhat with it. And God, what a dialogue with Paul. Anyway, chapter 3. Paul just gets done talking to the religious Jews, and again, the Jews must have been blown away by what Paul was saying. Because Paul was simply saying that your religion isn't going to get you in before a righteous God, that we need to realize that God is a righteous judge. Now, I think what is really cool for us to always remember is that when we approach God, when we say that, a lot of times we don't realize exactly what that means. It would be like you trying to approach the sun without any protection on. You would get fried, right? If you sit in the sun for too long, even with all the protection the atmosphere provides, you're still going to get scorched. Hey, Kurt. But just think if you approached the sun with all of its brilliance and brightness and fire and flame, you'd get torched. And when we approach God, we're approaching something Blaise Pascal called, being a mathematician in the 1600s, infinity. And his famous line is, every number in comparison to infinity is annihilated, right? Any number in comparison to infinity is annihilated. If God is infinity, you are anything but infinity, therefore annihilated. And so even your religious ceremonies ain't going to do it. Now in chapter 3, I'm going to read a bunch of this and then we'll kind of talk about it. But the point that he makes is in verse 27. Where then is boasting? A lot of us think we can boast before God. Again, we fail to realize who we're approaching when we approach, quote, God. We don't think of God as infinity. We think God of like 1,000 and we're at 100. We can get to 1,000. Well, that ain't going to happen. And God is much bigger, much glorious than you or I can even conceive, even with the revelation that we have, right? We get an idea of it, a very good idea of it from Christ, but it says in the Bible that we know in part and we prophesy in part, and until that which is fully come happens, which is Jesus that comes, and then we will fully know. So there's a partial knowing that we have right now. So what advantage, Paul says, and he's answering a question, what advantage then is there being a Jew? Well, Paul, hey man, if we ain't getting in by all of our circumcision and good deeds and our covenants, then what's the advantage of even being a Jew? And he says, or what value is there in circumcision? And he says, much in every way. First of all, they have been entrusted with the very words of God. What if some did not have faith? Will their lack of faith nullify God's faithfulness? Not at all. Let God be true and every man a liar, as it is written, so that you may be proved right when you speak and prevail when you judge. God is a judge. But if our unrighteousness brings out God's righteous more clearly, what shall we say? Question. That God is unjust in bringing his wrath on us? I am using a human argument, Paul says. Certainly not. If that were so, how could God judge the world? Some might argue, if my falsehood enhances God's truthfulness and so increases his glory, why am I still condemned as a sinner? Why not say, as we are being slanderously reported as saying, as some claim that we say, let us do evil that good may result, their condemnation is deserved. What shall we conclude then? Are we any better? Not at all. We have already made the charge that Jews and Gentiles are like all under sin, as it is written. And he's going to quote this passage. Now, I like what Paul's doing here because it kind of, a lot of us, we always try to philosophize our way out of God's righteous judgment. And we do that in many different ways. And so we can go to university, and when we're in university, we can learn philosophy, and we get a little bit of David Hume under our belt, a little bit of Nietzsche, a little bit of Kierkegaard, and we go, wow, man, I really know something. And we start thinking cosmological arguments, and we try to defeat this, and we try to defeat that. And you get the idea that Paul's saying, you might say this, you might say, hey, if my sinning exalts the glory of God, then why does God hold me accountable? And Paul says, well, man, what kind of talk is that, man? God says he's a judge. How's he going to judge the world if he can't even judge properly? But the point is that all your philosophy isn't going to matter. All you're trying to figure it out, and that's what you get in chapter 3, is all you trying to figure out and justify and rationalize, which we are super good at doing as human beings. It ain't gonna happen. You always try to, and me, we always try to cover our sin. We always try to make sure that we don't. We try to justify the reasons why we do it, or whatever it is. We tend to go that route. We tend to say, oh, well, this is why I do this, and this is this, and this is this, and see, God wouldn't da 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 da, and we go like that, and we're doing what these guys are doing here. We're saying, well, hey, I can live this way because this is what God's doing, and this is how this is, and our sins exalting God, and they're all this philosophy instead of just going, no, I'm a sinner, and I need salvation. See, it's hard for us just to kind of, as human beings, just kind of drop the guard and say, there is a chink in my armor. And I don't know if you can say that this morning, if you could just go, say that in an honest way, that there is a chink in my armor, man. And there's no justifying, there's no philosophizing, there's no things that, it is just a chink in my armor. And see, many of us don't want to say those two words, wrong. And Paul's saying that. And Paul's saying, he's going to say, as it is written, no one is righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands, no one who seeks God. And all have turned away. They have altogether become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. Their throats are an open grave. Their tongues practice deceit. Their poison of vipers is on their lips. Their mouths are full of cursing. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and misery mark their ways, and their way of peace they do not know, for there is no fear of God before their eyes. So we constantly rationalize our thought, our things. We don't want to come to God and just admit failure. And yet this passage says very clearly, this quote from the book of Psalms, that we are in absolute failure mode, right? If you go down this list, you'll go, wow, there's a lot of things that are true about my life. Jesus said, seek and you shall find. But there's one big problem that Jesus was trying to point us to, right? And that is, how many of us seek, right? How many of us seek? Lord, help me to seek you. Help me to even seek you in the morning, right? That I might find you. And this is what we see the psalmist always doing, kind of disciplining his soul. Why are you downcast, my soul? Man, seek the Lord. And because there was always that going astray, that going a different direction. And so he says, now we know that whatever the law says, and he's talking to those religious Jews again, he's going to be meeting with, he does meet with when he finally gets to Rome. Now that we know that whatever the law says, the commandments say, it says to those who are under the law, the Jewish people were under the law, so that every mouth may be silenced and the whole world accountable to God. So what is the purpose of the commandments? It was to hold the whole world accountable before God. For what? For their sin. Therefore, no one will be declared righteous in the sight of God by observing the law, for through the law comes the consciousness of sin, right? So we're made aware of our sin by the law. We don't seek the law to be justified before a righteous God, before a righteous judge. The law was there to show you your sin. So when you think of the commandments of God, the laws of God, see, some people look at it and they go, I'm really doing that. And that's not what the law was there to do. And that's not why the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7 is there. It's there to show you your utter depravity. When you read, and I know when I read it at 17 years old, when I read the 10 Commandments for the first time, I didn't think, wow, man, I'm doing really good. I thought, dude, I suck. That's what I thought. I thought, golly, if this is God's righteousness, if this is some standard of the divine being, then I got a problem. See, that's what it's there to do. And now God says, Paul says, the Lord through him, but now a righteousness from God apart from the law, meaning you can try to be righteous by the law, but I don't think it's going to work, man. You can try to get there through whatever means, some righteous rule, some righteous ceremony, some rule of holy living, but you can't do it because you'll never get to God's standard of righteousness. You'll never hit infinity. But now a new righteousness has been made known, a righteousness from God, right? Now remember, he says he's not ashamed of the gospel, for unto it is the righteousness of God, right? For salvation, meaning the gospel shows the righteousness of God. And this is what he's getting at. The law and prophets testified about this, he says, and he says this righteousness from God comes through faith in Jesus Christ. So this is a new way, man. I don't want to say so much a new way, but I want to say there's this other way. There's this, you can come in through the law, which got to be perfect, right? Or you can come in through faith in Jesus Christ. To all who believe. For there is no difference, for all have sinned and all fall short of the glory of God. Isn't that great? For all who believe, all, anyone who believes, right? It says there is no difference, no partiality, no difference, right? None of us. All humans are the same. We all have one major problem, and that is we are messed up in our righteousness before a holy God. And so all of us need salvation. All of us are in the same boat. None of us are any superior to another. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All. Again, everyone. All of us. Right? Every single person. There's no room for any kind of superiority complex in us if we understand this properly, because we're now comparing ourselves no longer to people, but to God. Man, that's pretty radical, right? So I might be able to play guitar better than some people, right? Because I compare myself to other people, but you know what? I certainly ain't the best, and if God could play guitar, he'd be if I compared myself to his playing, I'd be way worse. So it says, and we are justified freely by his grace. Isn't that cool? You're justified. You're declared right in the court of law, in the court, free by his grace, by his gift, his goodness, which came through redemption. It's a redemptive work that came through Jesus Christ. It's talking about Jesus Christ dying on the cross, his redemption, buying you, purchasing you, dying for you, right? And it says God presented him as sacrifice of atonement. There we get the idea of the covering, the sacrifice of covering. Through atonement is covering. Through faith in his blood. We trust in the blood of Christ to forgive us, right? He did this to demonstrate his justice, because in his forbearance he had left the sins committed beforehand unpunished. He did it to demonstrate his justice at the present time, so as to be the just and the justifier of those who have faith in Jesus. So he's the just one, and he's the justifier. He's the one who declares us righteous. So he is the judge and he is the justifier. He's the one. That's a really amazing statement, actually, about the Father and the Son, if you really get down to it. But it's just a neat passage, this kind of latter section, that just talks about that God showed his justice. See, God could have been seen as unjust, not to judge sin. But God was just to judge sin. And we see that through his sending of his Son. So then we finally get to that ending part. Where is boasting? Is it excluded on what principle? On the observing of the law? No, but that of faith. For we maintain that a man is justified not by faith, or is justified by faith apart from observing the law. If God, is God the God of the Jews only? Is he not the God of the Gentiles too? Wow, this is what got Paul really in prison, right? People didn't like him to hear this because they were so into themselves. Yes, the Gentiles too, since there is only one God who will justify the circumcised by faith and the uncircumcised through that same faith. Do we then nullify the law by this faith? Not at all. Rather, we uphold the law. So basically, he just says, hey, you can't boast anymore. You can't boast. God's the God of everybody. God's the God of the religious Jew, and he's the God of the pagan Gentile. The Lord is the creator of all, and all is going to come in through faith in the atonement of Jesus Christ, not through observing of your law of any kind of thing. So, it's amazing, right? None of us seek God. Some of us seek peace. Some of us seek through like a meditation. We seek some kind of tranquility, but we don't seek the true and living God. And that's what the scripture is getting at. But that all of us are saved not by our works, but we're saved by this wonderful faith. And we're declared right in the court of law. We're declared where it says that we are justified freely by his grace. Now, if that doesn't excite you, I don't know what does, man. Freely justified? What if you went to the court of law and it just said, you're free, man. You're free to go. Even though you blew it, you didn't do the law, you broke the law, but now you're free. I tell you, that's a beautiful, beautiful idea, and it's one that can revolutionize our lives this morning. If we just focus on the amazing grace of God for us, that you're not saved by your works. You can let go. You can let go of your work. You can, as Christians, you can let go of your sin that you so badly want to hold on and think that you're doing good before Jesus, that you're really towing your line, that you really got it all together, and you don't sin. You don't have none of those big sins in your life. You can finally let go, let down the guard, and you can go, you know what? I do have sin. Man, greed has taken over my world. Lustful attitudes have taken over my world. Lord, I find myself always doing things with the wrong motivations in my mind, in my heart, Lord. I find other things creeping in. I find a lack of this. I find jealousy here. I find striving there. Lord, let me bring those things before you. See, now I can let the guard down. Why? Because I'm saved by grace. I know he loves me. I know I'm accepted. See, I can admit failure now. I can admit failure because it's not upon me to get through my good works to get into heaven. So I can just let it go. Now just think about if we were like that as human beings, if we could just be that way with one another, if we can just let down the guard. Now, the reason why we can't amongst one another is because we don't know how to give grace. We don't know how to say to people, I forgive you. We don't know how to say, that's okay. My relationship with you is not contingent on you doing good things for me. It's my commitment towards you. We've lost our way, or maybe we've always lost our way, probably, in that since the garden, in that aspect. And so it's so not safe a lot of times for a husband to share with a wife or a wife to share with the husband because you can't. Why? Because there's no grace. Everything's contingent on works. Everything is contingent on your work. Well, with God, Paul's saying it's not. You can let go. You can let it down. The chink is there in the armor. Everyone who comes before the infinite God is going to have chinks in their armor. If we ever put on a front that makes us think that we don't have chinks, then we as leaders in churches are doing you a disservice. We are just like you. All human beings are struggle in the same way. We all have temptations in the same way. None of us are different. To think otherwise is a farce, unfortunately. So what a great freeing passage. I hope you just are blessed tremendously. I'm super stoked. Chapter 4 tomorrow. We're just going to keep this going because it's so good. It gets good and it's going to keep rolling. So you guys take care. Have a great day, okay? I forgot to change this up here, by the way. Let me do this real quick. Watch this. Watch the screen and you'll see what I change. Let's see if I could change something. I don't know. My mouse is going weird on me. Okay, here we go. There we go. See it go away? This is chapter 3. Hey guys, you guys take care. Okay? Bye-bye.